チャコールが染み渡ったイチョウ並木の通りに有頂天に袖を振る金魚が泳ぐ記念馬のようさ簡単に嘘ぶけるラムネ玉魔法にかかったハムシのように淡い夢にとらわれこの夜を抜け出せない
Hashihime of the Old Book Town, or in other name that I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not gonna pronounce it. Ko Shotengai no Hajime. Yeah. Period. Visual novel. BL. Boys love. Let's hope it is safe to play it on while streaming. You know, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're gonna see the censored version. If you have like any type of content that shouldn't be allowed on Twitch. Period. Let's start. Oh, and we're starting. According to the man, the phantom lived in the basement. A phantom? Night after night, he would kidnap someone, tie them to an old chair. A old chair? A cold chair. Oh, it's cold, not old. A cold chair, and tell them his questionable life story until the break of dawn. Till the break of dawn. I don't know, I think I thought about a song with Till the Break of Dawn, but I don't think there is a song with this line. He spoke. Without passion or emotion, he spoke about himself, as if speaking of someone else. If I had to complain about one thing, it would be how cold the chair was. My second complaint would be that the man's story was boring. And my third was that the man seemed to want my final opinion on it. Why would you want something like that? Because I'm the phantom. Up until a moment ago, I should have been looking out at the Shodom River from Shin Bridge. As soon as I realized I had been kidnapped, I started to understand why the chair was so cold. You get it now? He asked. But before I offered my opinion, I had one question. When will the morning come? Once I am down. What? Once I'm down. If the phantom said it was night, it would become night. If he said it was morning, it would become morning. I'm in the middle of the text. But who cares? I'm reading. But once he did it, it was no longer Japan. Nor was it another world. It was a so-called world of illusions, with its own concept of time that Phantom controlled. The story begins with me. Oh, me, hi. Me or you? A man harboring obscure anxieties about the transient world, being detained by a curious and grotesque monster. It's a miserable and beautiful story about me, finally, clinging to life when faced with a genuine god of death. At least, it should have been. Oh. When he finished turning the last page, he tapped the now bare table with his middle finger. He seems to be demanding something or searching for something. It got into the gramophone, brisk melody. At any rate, I could tell the behavior was out of disgust. Oh? Did you hear that? Look at them. Oh, we didn't hide. Okay. What is this? Without thinking, I blurted out the same thing. I had experienced his voice to be more full of praise and admiration. His reaction was somehow different from what I had imagined. Maybe I had given him the wrong manuscript. Thinking that couldn't be possible, I took a peek. No matter how many times I looked it over, though it was the story that I'd written, The Phantom of in the Basement.
話はこれで終わりなの？ああ、いや、続きは明日だ。明日って。ああ、そう。君は不完全なものを見せたってわけか。不完全とはひどい言い草だ。これは連載もののつもりであってだな。
Kawase blew out the tobacco smoke he was holding in, and indescribable? Whoa, I didn't know this was a word. A smile, indescribable. Fuck. Let's start again. An indescribable smile was waiting for me beyond the haze I parted.
何を笑っている？嫌なら返せ。いや、言いたいことはまだある。
Kawase pulled the manuscript towards himself and looked it over again. He traced over the last lines with his pinky finger, over and over again in disgust. When will the morning come? On sundown.
よくわからないし。ダジャレではない。言葉遊びだ。言葉遊びね。おっと失礼。
His cigarette sprung up like a shishi, odoshi, and scattered ash all over the page. As if that weren't enough, he snubbed the flame out on my manuscript. The flame burned through several pages before the smoldering sound stopped. He tilted his head in confusion when I immediately gathered up the manuscript pages.
そんなに大事なものだった。
This son of a bitch.
当たり前だろう。今回のは第1弾ってあってだな。第2弾、第3弾と連なって初めて完成するのだ。なのに。
An impressive hole pierced right through the middle of the manuscript. When I glared at him through the small peephole, Kawase pulled out his wallet in annoyance.
いくら払えば許してくれるかな。
Are you trying to buy me? That's not the problem. That's not the problem, Kawase. He was like an old man fishing a mouthful of gold teeth. Even if you rebuild the crumbling enamel with gold and silver, there's still not the teeth you had to begin with. Period. And yet, I wasn't such an ogre that I wouldn't take his feelings into consideration and try to settle things out of court, so to speak. 3 yen.
ちり
Period.
紙にしては高くついたな。
ちり紙だと貴様というやつはもういい。
What a truly evil man. Evil. He was devil, and he most likely had no idea what sort of feeling I had put into this manuscript. He couldn't imagine just how much planning, and more planning I put into each page, with my hands, my eyes, and my heart. With I faked the cough and let it sigh.
貧相な感性だ。
It wasn't as if I had no talent. There was no way I had no skill whatsoever. It was all Kawase's fault. He was an unfeeling, an emotional devil.
今なんて言った？
He...
貧相な感性だと言ったのだ。
聞き捨てならないね。審美眼があると言ってほしい。
審美眼か。所詮宝石が自ら輝くまでその価値に気づけないくせに。
自分が何かの原石だって言いたいの？言い訳だけはしゃれてるね。
言い訳などではない。それによく分かった。お前がどれだけつまらない人間かということがな。
This was the 4th time I had asked Kawase for a critique. The first time, when I was nervous, he would crumple it up. The second time, when I was hopeful, he would send it flowing away on the river. The third time, when I was fully prepared, he would turn it into a paper airplane and send it flying away into the sky.
何を見せてもつまらない。何を聞いても退屈だ。もう難があるのは貴様の方としか思えない。
本当に失礼なやつだな君は。俺だって心に響けば手を叩くし、感動できれば君を撫でてあげるよ。
それはそれで気持ち悪いな。
ああ、早く君をワシャワシャしてあげたいな。
What? What exactly are you trying to say? With that deadpan voice. Things like that could make me flare up at him again and again. But unable to find the right words for a comeback, I swallowed my feelings. I was the one who had asked a guy like this for critics. I was the one who had brought it up, so there was absolutely no way I could back down.
明日出直す。
楽しみだね。次はもう少し多めに持ってこよう。
Kawase said, tapping his wallet.
また持つことになるだろうからね。
This son of a bitch. What an utterly vile man. Kawase lit his last match as he held a cigarette in his smirking mouth. But perhaps my curses had worked because it wouldn't light. In the end, the head of the match broke off and rolled tragically away.
あれ？しけってる。
Okay, his eyes so blue. I think I should have blue eyes.
梅雨ってのは 生きにくい季節だよ。
Kawase commented on the weather as he tossed the matchbox away. The thing glass distorted the sky, making me worry even more about getting back. It felt as though the sound of the rain tapping against the window was telling me to hurry on home.
私はこれで失礼する。食うだけ食って帰るなんて想像しいやつだな。
Which one of us was being obnoxious now? I gathered up the remaining pages Kawase had read and discarded them, glared at him. Discarded, then glared at him. Kawase brought his coffee to his now lonely lips, the corner of his eyes clinging as he smiled crudely. One day, one of my stories will hit you so hard you'll look positively drunk. When I thought that, I cracked a smile as well.
邪悪な顔だね。お前こそ。時間は明日の昼、君の家だ。ああ、来たれ来たれ。俺から逃げ出そうなんて思うなよ。当たり前だ。お前も意地を張らず、そろそろ素直になって。
Oh, so our mirror argument was suddenly drowned out by a deep rumbling, along with an eerie sound that seemed to be speeding right at us. What is happening? The ground shook violently. I was immediately thrown to the floor. Waiters screamed. Plates broke. The window panes cracked. Kawase spat out his coffee. The moment I was flung from my seat, my manuscript scattered all over the place again. What had just happened? The roar grew distant, and the shaking gradually subsided. One page from manuscript gently covered the top of my head. When I removed it and looked at the ceiling, the chandelier which was spinning around and around made me dizzy. The guests and waitress fell silent. They all had the same look on their faces. Only the gramophone sang its jazz like it was completely unaware.
大きい車が通ったのか。バカか君。地震に決まってるだろ、地震。
Yeah, it was quite obvious you were being an idiot. I agree with Kawase.
地震。こんなに大きいのは初めてだな。そう。去年くらいから結構頻発してると思うけど。くそ。
Kawase looked down at his chest and grieved for his uniform, which was damp with coffee. It wasn't all that bad. He could just wipe it off and let it dry on his own, but Kawase clicked his tongue dramatically.
今日は最低最悪の日だ。
Hey, Dengi.
たかが服が濡れたぐらいでなんだ。君の安い服とはわけが違うんだよ。
Cheap rags. Clock him.
巷じゃ服を汚すのが流行っているのだぞ。人の価値は服にあらず、本質にありとな。外見より中身を。ね。だったら裸になって自分の高潔性を示しなよ。
What?
それが一番手っ取り早いが、法に触れるのは怖い。だろうね。 結局君は慣習にとらわれない自分を見てほしいだけなんでしょ。いやしいね。早速外見ににじみ出てるよ。
I'm feeling, can you feel it in the air? Can you feel it in the air? I'm feeling it.
ガトリング砲のような嫌味だな。
Feeling as though I should back off from Kawase in his PC mode, I once again began to gather up my manuscript. Everyone there in the earthquake-shaken cafe had come down and begun to move. Everyone that was...
全然取れない。
What happened?
くそ。
Except for Kawase.
汚れているようには見えないが。
君のメガネがすでに汚れてるからだよ。
Just in case, I cleaned my glasses and took another look, but I really couldn't understand what he was so upset about. Could black clothes be stained even blacker than they were to begin with? I guess his fuzziness really was some kind of disorder. Even I wasn't stupid enough to fan the flame by trying to understand his pain. I decided to quickly try to wrap things up here. A waitress made her way towards us. Ooh. Oh, she bowed and fell to her knees and began to eagerly wipe off Kawase's uniform. Ooh. Her pink handkerchief turned a faint coffee brown. If I could guess why she was doing this, then the actual person she was doing it to must have realized the waiter's feeling for him already. I wonder what Kawase would do. Well, it was pointless either way.
おい君、あのだな。
やめてくれ、汚いから。
He's dirty.
そうだ。大事な手ぬぐいが汚れてしまう。だからあんまりその男には。
いいんです。汚れてもいいんです。この手ぬぐいはおばあちゃんが刺繍してくれた大切な手ぬぐいです。けど。
Oh, there was a red flower blooming on it.
帝大の、いえ、あなた様のお召し物にシミがついては。
君が汚いって言ってるんだよ。
Oh? What?
知らないババアが触れた手ぬぐいなんてなおさら嫌だね。
Is this bitch for real?
おばあちゃんの話は嘘です。私が縫いました。
How cunning. It was like she knew she could attach some kind of sentimental value to a simple handkerchief just by starting off with "It's my grandmother." However, that only infuriates Kawase even more. Kawase dip. Kawase poured his remaining coffee over the waitress' head. Can we see space? Back? No, I'm afraid of like pressing something. Oh, okay, we got it. It's ask. Look, he's an asshole. Do we befriend him? Is he befriendable? Thinking about it, he's the first one who's presenting to us, and he's an asshole. They tremble and let out a delayed yelp.
上級は上級らしく奉仕したら。
ご奉仕ですか？
見てわかんないの？コーヒーがこぼれたの。この店の耐震が甘いせいだよ。おかわりくらい黙って提供してほしいね。
He's an asshole level 2. The waitress was dumbfounded by his stone cold eyes. His stone cold eyes. Fuck. She probably never thought the person she admired would ever treat her this way. That's a sad reality, girl. Normally, I would have kept quiet and ignored them, but today I found my eyes wandering nervously.
聞いてる？
Kawase, stop. Kawase said, grabbing the waitress' hair and turning her ear towards him. Look at this macist. Macist. Get your hands off her.
Kawase!
Kawase, stop.
前々からこの髪も気に入らなかった。バッサリ言った方が可愛いんじゃないの？
Naturally, everyone in the cafe was focusing their gazes on us. Oh, he's bullying the girl. The other waitresses were paralyzed with fear in the back, and even the timid chef made a rare appearance. What a mess. I like this coffee's food. Now it would be awkward to come here.
わかりました。今すぐコーヒーをお持ちします。
The waitress should have been in shock, but her eyes were sparkling. Is she a masochist? When Kawase let go of her hair, she went off to grab him another coffee with quite a spring in her step. Once she regrouped with the other waitress, they went back to their lively chatter. She pressed the handkerchief Kawase had touched to her nose, ended up sharing its smell with the other servers. I'm in shock.
どんくさい女。ああ、これが一番着慣れてたんだけどね。まああと3着あるしいいか。
なぜだ。
何が？汚い髪触っちゃった。
なぜなのだ。
だから何が？
なぜお前中心に世界が回るのだ。
He's the main character in his universe because I am the main character.
好かれて嬉しい。
嬉しいとか嬉しくないとかそういう問題ではなくてだな。ああ、もういい。
He shouldn't be able to get away with his oblivious tyranny. If he being a politician, he would have been the target of scrutiny. Scrutiny? What is scrutiny? If he'd been a soldier, he would have been called a rebel. But Kawase was forgiven. That must have been the lucky he was born with. But what annoyed me even more was that he himself didn't seem to derive any joy from his own selfishness. Noticing my unamused gaze, the malicious smile returned to Kawase's face.
ところで早く帰らないとまずいんじゃない？雨強くなってるよ。
言われなくとも帰る。
Let's leave this way, Sky. Remember my manuscript. Get ready up, and tapped it against the table to straighten it out. Chaos's terrible mood was improving. Perhaps he was finally giving up on his uniform.
それにしてもおかしな場所でんだよな。君が働く梅鉢堂ってのは。
まあもう慣れた。
さすが君も君ってやつだから。
おい、どういう意味だそれは。
変人同士お似合いって意味だよ。それじゃあね、期待してるよ、玉森くん。
That damn wannabe editor. Is this the map? Oh. Look at this image, so beautiful. 2 years ago, we came to the capital from the countryside of Aizu. Kawase and I had been together for as long as I could remember, so he was something like a childhood friend. Long ago, we would often play by the mountain streams, with fish, catch bugs, and laugh together. I say laugh together, but Kawase had that same cynic personality even back then. So he wouldn't touch the fish he caught, and he let out the bugs he kept die. Anyway, he was a fuzzy man. That's why what I thought was fun and what he thought was fun were probably completely different. People were generally shocked whenever I talked about our relationship. They joked, friends today, enemies tomorrow. For better or worse, he and I were completely opposites. Unlike me, Kawase was flexible, unique, special, a genius. My writing, like the piece from earlier, had the power to captivate people. And yet, Kawase's true nature, like what he had shown the readers and me, was pitch black. The reason he could hurl or insults at each other and still hang out together could be summed up in a few words. We were childhood friends. Sorry. Oh. Let's keep going. The street car, which was running a little behind the schedule, finally came. Settling pushed in, I was forced to stand in the corner of the car. The rain was coming down hard now, making the midway sky dim. It was a cold rain. I wondered how long this year's rainy season would last. Someone once said, instead of asking the rain in the sky, ask the cat. Why the cat?
What?
Huh? Oh, sorry. Cats. Animals. Speaking of animals, the streetcar went from Kenda Bridge to Jinbochu via the Nishikusho riverside. A smoky fragrance gently wafted by when I jumped from the streetcar. It was the unique atmosphere that breathed through the old book town of Jinbochu. Used bookstores here and there were closing up their shops because of the rain. Customers were driven out in groups. The shopkeepers were indifferent to them only during times like this. The customers without umbrellas had no choice but to find a place for cover other than under the eaves. Overflowing with sights, They ran through the old book town. I was in a hurry, but not because I wanted to get out of the rain. There was a reason I needed to get back to the shop right away. The shop was called Umebashido, located on the outskirts of the old book town. It was an iron building that at first glance didn't appear to be a used bookstore. It was a mysterious building that looked more like a nobleman's storehouse or bank treasury. I leaned my umbrella against my shoulder and opened the doors using both hands and in a building of force. We only opened shop during gloomy, rainy weather like this.
店主、ただいま戻りました。
はい。
The shopkeeper gave me a small nod from behind the soji. He coughed a few times and seemed to be turning over in his bed. The shopkeeper said he suffered from an illness. That's why, in an effort to be as considerate as possible, I kept myself from hurrying as I headed up to the second floor. I burst into my room, stubbornly walked over the futon I never put away, and jumped towards the fishbowl. Let's see his room. Look, so pretty.
金魚。
We have a goldfish. In the bowl was a goldfish swimming around in a healthy. I looked down at him and felt like I could finally breathe. Thank goodness. The animal I had remembered on the streetcar was this guy. I had been worried the earthquake earlier may have frightened him, but it didn't look like any water had spilled out. The bowl hadn't even moved. Apparently, Unbachidos didn't just look sturdy. The water was cloudy. I guess I had been so engrossed with my manuscript over the past 3 days and nights that I hadn't even thought about cleaning out his bowl. This won't do, I thought as I grasped the goldfish tightly in my hand and scooped it out of dirty water. Sorry. The goldfish returned, gasping for air. I know you're suffering, but please hang in there. I threw the dirty water out the window and tossed the goldfish into the now empty bowl. You'll have to suffer for this a little longer. I felt around the rain gutter above my head and pulled out the corky plug. As soon as I did, the rain that had fallen from the roof into the gutter drained into the fishbowl. Freed from gravity, the goldfish swam around peacefully. I plugged the rain gutter back up and was filled with the happiness at seeing my now counted goldfish. A shadow suddenly flickered beneath the fishbowl. When I moved the bowl, I saw a red umbrella looking up at me in shock.
相変わらず雑だな。
Nakami?
みなかみ、ちょうどよかったな。私も今帰ったところだ。
うん、ちょうどよかった。
またお前の言う通り雨が降ったぞ。おかげでほとんど濡れずに済んだ。
そうか。
どうした？なんだか元気がないな。
いや、金魚を素手で掴むなよ。
So you even see me doing that, huh?
金魚屋の親父だってそうしてただろ
でもかわいそうだ。
う。なんだ、私に文句があるのか？
文句というか、金魚飼育の助言というか。
金魚屋の親父がこれでいいと言ったからそうしたまでだ。
売り物の金魚もいっぱい死んでただろう。
ああ、なんでだろうな。
どうした？今日はやけに気が立ってるな。まるで川瀬みたいに横暴だ。
Kawase. So yeah, Minakami looks a lot like Kawase, not gonna lie. I was trying to hide my bad mood, but he's seeing right through me. My face suddenly fell. He immediately smiled. Then he threw his umbrella and came into the shop.
真面目くさって。
Say what you want about my competitive nature, but I didn't want to be compared to Kawase. I gave him a good fish, a heap of food to console him, then went downstairs to where Minakami was waiting. Like Kawase, Minakami was another childhood friend from the same village and also a student at the Imperial University. Minakami unwrapped the cloth he had brought with him and pulled out some booklets. He took a few and returned them to the shelf, slowly enough to make me yawn. I watched this daily scene with my chin resting in my hand.
適当でいいのだ、みなかみ。ここは目的があってくる場所じゃない。適当に眺め、適当に手に取る。それが梅鉢堂の面白さだ。
It was probably just because neither I nor the shopkeeper wanted to go through the trouble of organizing, but wording it that way made it more novel.
そういうことだったのか。吉屋の隣にルイコが並んでいるのを見てから、この店はおかしいと思っていたが。
Minakami nodded in understanding as he continued to return the books to the shelf, his hands moving as if he were tracing constellations.
だからお前な。
なあ、玉森。今気がついたんだが、やはり無意味なんてことはないよ。
Minakami pointed towards the top shelf of the bookcase as if he had found the planet Venus among the books.
いろはにほら、例えばルイコーの80万年後の社会の隣には吉屋の花物語が並んでる。本の題名順に並べられているんだ。
それを適当というのだ。
I finally stood up, grabbed the books from his hand, and shoved them into the shelf.
考えすぎか？
ミステリー好きがこうしたな。だが、規範があるなら守るに越したことはない。
I pulled out Kasadu's double heart, which Manakami had just pulled back, and went to return it to the top shelf. Or at least I tried to, but no matter how much I jumped, I couldn't reach. Manakami knocked the spine with his hand and pushed it to the back of the shelf.
玉森はこっちを頼む。
まあ。
Other books he had given to me went into the bottom shelf. Before I could glare at him and tell him not to make fun of me, he looked back. I reluctantly got on my knees and pulled away the books, following his lead.
結局、3日間で何冊読んだんだ
？20冊は借りたかな。
20冊って。
I hadn't even read that many books this year.
新作は入れたか？
1ヶ月前から何も変わっていないぞ。
そうか。
残念そうだなって。まさかここにある本全部読破したのか？
おそらく。もうピンとくる題名はないから。
Once Minakami had finished returning all 20 books he had borrowed, he bent back and looked along the shelves. Then he let out a distant sigh full of sense of accomplishment.
4000冊あるんだぞ。
何冊かすでに読んだことがあるものだったから、実際読んだのは300冊くらいだ。一段落ついてしまったかな。
Minakami was an abnormally avid reader. If there was a story he hadn't read, it was like he couldn't relax until he had a book. Even though I said he couldn't relax, it wasn't like he would fly into a frenzy or anything. If he found a book he didn't know, he would gently take it in his hands, head to the register, and pay. Then he would sell it back once he was done reading it. That was all. At first glance, he seemed to be a casual reader, but reading every book in the Imperial University's library was definitely abnormal.
そういえば、川瀬に批評をもらうとか言ってただろう。今日はどうだった？
ね、あれな、散々だったよ。
散々？一体何が気に入らなかったんだろう。
Minakami looked truly confused, unable to bear seeing his face like that. I immediately averted my gaze. He didn't think there was such thing as a poor piece of literature or writing. That's why he wouldn't hold back with his praise for me. Honestly, when I realized that, I had wondered if it was really okay to find comfort in that ambiguity. And recently, I had been asking that brute Kawase for his critics. If Kawase was the wimp, Minakami was candy. If he was candy sweeter than... He was a candy sweeter than cow's pee. What my wounded ego needed right now was that sweet candy named Minakami.
明日の昼、川瀬が梅鉢堂に来ることになってる。だからお前も来い。そして川瀬に言って聞かせるのだ。
言って聞かせる？何をだ？
私の輝かざる才能についてだ。お前が言えば、奴も少しは私を見返すかもしれん。
I wanna see his eyes.
すまん。明日の昼は講義があって、そう多くは時間を。
私の言うことが聞けないのか？
嫌に必死だな。講義の合間に行けたら行くよ。
いいや、必ず来い。
だから行けたら。
I mean, I'm more open to be with Minakami if he's an option, you know? But I think Kawase, I don't like that type of guys. He's too toxic. Minakami is like, you know?
必ず来い。
そう不安がるなよ。
I wasn't in a teasy at all. I was just lonely.
玉森らしくないな。これでも読んで元気出せ。
Minakami said as he handed me the last book left in his hand. Wondering what it was, I took a look at the cover. It was Kyasaku Yumeno's Dogra Magra.
店の商品を借りっぱなしじゃ悪いからな。読み終わったら商品として並べてくれて構わない。新作だから高値をつけてもいいんじゃないか？
いらん、持って帰れ。
どうしてだ。喜ぶと思ったのに。
私は今忙しいのだ。他人の無双など見ていられん。
そうか、残念だな。
でおい、勝手に商品に混ぜるな。
バレたか。
You calmly put it on the shelf right in front of me. I was so irritable today I couldn't even get through Nakami's little joke. I went back to the register and slumped over so far that I ended up lying across the counter. I saw a single piece of paper flutter down from my slanted point of view. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was written on it in bold print. I peeled it off the desk, lifting high above my head out of reflex.
震える悪魔って。
ずっと見たがっていただろ。
再上映されるのか。
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a horror film. Fireworks. Sorry. The drugs came. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a horror film. The main characters were a man named Dr. Jekyll and his other personality, Hyde. It showed at the Nikatsu Theater in Canada last spring, but I had missed its run, and now it was here. I couldn't believe. Doyu Cinemas was rerunning it. I checked the date and time. It would be playing tomorrow's afternoon. It didn't seem to be some sort of cruel joke either.
奥さんから招待券をいただいたんだ。ご婦人方は怪奇映画に興味がないそうだ。
そりゃそうだ。女子供には分からんよ。
けど、お前が忙しいんじゃな。
行かない理由がない。
I thrust the jacket's dip into my sleeve. Minakami was shocked by how enthusiastically I'd made up my mind, but he just smiled and nodded.
そう言うと思ったよ。明日の夜、東洋記念まで待ち合わせでいいか。
あ、
Minakami folded his cloth and stuffed it in his bag, then put out his steel-damped mantle.
もう行くのか。
テートに古い友人が来ているんだ。これから会いに行ってくる。
私の知り合いか。
ああ、いいや。どうだろ
う。どうだろうってお前。
We were old friends, so didn't that mean they were just normal acquaintances? But Minakami would say nothing more about it, so I stopped pressing him. He was trying to show off again. I wasn't sure if he heard my grumbling, but he opened his umbrella and smiled even
う。
wider.
勉強も頑張れよ。田舎に残したばあさんのためにもな。
そう。
That has nothing to do with this. I was going to throw out my usual comeback, but instantly felt silent. As if you see through it, Minakami furrowed his brows, but immediately hid behind the edge of his umbrella. Then, like a fading leaf, he swiftly passed me and disappeared. Minakami was gone. All top reminded was the sound of the rain remained. Bye, Minakami. But still, he always left a strange, lingering presence. Maybe he himself didn't realize how unusual it felt. It must have been something only I noticed. Minakami never said goodbye. His departure were always vague. It made me think he would suddenly show up again if I called his name. I was probably the only one who noticed that. But keep up with my studies, huh? I rest my cheek against the counter again and flipped through a reference book Minakami had given me. It had been 2 years. Just looking at the old reference book made me realize that the time had gone by in the blink of an eye. I mentioned it before, but Kawase, Minakami, and I had come to the capital 2 years ago. To say the capital had the finest educational institute in Japan wouldn't have been an exaggeration, and we came to take the Imperial University's entrance exam. I had studied for it. Even though I sometimes read fantasy novels, and went to the movies, I had studied ever so diligently all the time. Since I didn't think any of us would actually pass, I never dreamed I would be the only one to fail. All the time, Nakami and I were under the care of a philanthropist named Oizumi. She was a widow who acted as if she didn't expect anything from us. Country bumping. Again. With the fireworks. Take as long as you like, she'd say. I had been moved by her words. When it came to me, the one who didn't pass, she looked at me with battling disgust. 2 years had gone by, and then this year she had given me a final notice to vacate. She kicked me out of her house. She told me to be grateful she provided me with meals and a place to sleep, like a cared. If you're going to act like a victorious person, see it through to the end. I provided food. I'm gonna give up on being for you. I provided food and a home for my goldfish, but I didn't feel any bitterness towards him. In fact, I wanted him to ask more of me. I was much more noble than she was. And the shopkeeper of Yumebachi dolls was even more noble.
玉森くん、ちょっと散歩してくるよ。
ああ、はい。
店番お願いします。
I heard the back door open, his footsteps and muffled coughs melted into the sound of the rain. It had only been a month ago. I'd been driven out of the Oizumi's house. Out fled from her house. Rain like what we were having today, beating down on me. I'd have no money, no shelter. What have awaited me in the distance was Mabachido's large front doors. To get out of the rain, I pretended to look for books. When led out a gloomy sight to the shopkeepers had spoken to me from the back of the store. It was like a broken record that day. I tried to say something, but I couldn't answer. My voice just crackled. It was the only sound that I could get out. But the shopkeeper, with his calm voice, full of understanding, had fixed the needle on my record and made me play it all out. Listening to how I'd fled from my previous lodgings, to how I hadn't eaten anything for half a day, to how it had been more than a day since I bathed. And once he had done listening, he offered me a deal. If I ran the shop, he would rent out a room in the second floor to me. The shop was closed when it was sunny. said he wanted me to open and run the shop only on rainy days. Every morning he would leave enough money for my meals for the day by the register. That was the only material exchange between us. That's right. I never saw the shop owner, not even once. Well, whatever. I went back to leaning my face against my hand and watching the scenery blurred by the rain outside. I was bored. Not really bored, I just couldn't muster any strain into my sluggish body. But I earthed my cell phone, grabbed a feather duster, and wandered around the shop. Suddenly I felt like I saw canvases through the bookshelves. It was definitely the image of the moment he dug his cigarette into my manuscript. Then, clear as day, I saw Kawase's vulgar smile. Apparently, I really was having a hard time dealing with his hard criticism. I looked away from that moment and plopped into the floor. It was annoying, way too annoying. Maybe it would have been better if a complete stranger had said that to me, but I'll have to keep facing him tomorrow and the day after. There was no way I could run from him now. I was the one who asked for his critique. As a writer, all I could do was continue spewing out stories. A writer. What sort of writer was I if I couldn't even satisfy a single person? Kawase holding me back was the reason I never considered taking anything to a publisher. There's probably nothing I could create that would ever captivate him. I'd probably never be able to write anything that would make that guy smile and tell me I've done a good job. I set my glasses on the top of my head and used the palms of my hand to rub my closed eyes. Stars scattered behind my eyelids, and unusual sparkling patterns formed. When I opened my eyes, the area had transformed into a strange blue dimension. When I happened to look forward, I found this guy standing in the rain. Drops dramatically bounced off the leaf he was using as an umbrella. Look at him, so cute. He seems to be slowly thinking something over in his head while he held his breath in his stomach. It was as if he had made up his mind about something. That was all the frog said.
ダメだ。お前のような異形に本は売れん。
僕は異形なんかじゃありません。本読みが大好きな小学1年生です。
By the way, this kind of thing happened to me quite often. I had the ability to see strange things for a long time, except this wasn't anything supernatural. It was an illusion produced by my subconscious. Honestly, there was a part of me that was a little disappointed this hallucination was only a frog. If his form had been more grotesque, this scene would have been much more dramatic.
本をください。
黙れ。
本をください。
お前はあの日あの時あの橋で殺されたのだ。それに気づかぬ愚かな異形よ。さあ、 成仏しろ。
Yeah, that wasn't so bad. It was strange, no matter how poor my creations may have been in the moment, they seemed brilliant. Whenever I asked Kawase about the phenomenon, he called it narcissism driven from arrogance. It was definitely arrogance. Those stupid eyes, those short legs, that nervously trembling body. I was starting to find the hallucination somewhat amusing. The alien was no longer myself. The main character was... right, the owner of a used bookstore by our appearance, but he was secretly a medium. It was a setup that made me think of a certain someone, but whatever. The main character should be refined, composed, and wear glasses that make him look like an intellect. But then he would shockingly use a hickish word like in it.
ほら
The frogman eyes open wide when he looked over Harushiko, the shopkeeper. Taking a direct hit, he sank into the opposite wall. Look at him, he's so cute. Why are we bullying him?
おかえりネガオ。ここは君の来る場所ではない。
ひどい。僕はただ本が読みたいだけなのに。
君にジンゴが読めるかね。
読めないから読むんです。そうして学んで僕も人間になってあの人間に。
あの人間とは。
The tears the frogman cried turned into nourishment and replenished the moisture in his body. Plop. He rolled off the wall and took the defensive, turning his eyes, tired with rage, towards Haruhiko. The frogman skillfully manipulated his tongue and began to pluck books off the shelves. One by one, Haruhiko's attacks and blocks were in vain as the tongue suddenly pierced through a bookcase. Books rained down from the falling bookcase. However, the decision Haruhiko made in that very instant was even more surprising. Ooh.
あの
When I suddenly snapped out of it, I was lying on the floor, grasping a pen. Before me was a manuscript I was in the middle of writing. Perhaps because I was writing before the ink could dry, there were several letters smudged to the left. Apparently I had been a little overzealous. I counted the scattered manuscript pages as I gathered them up, but I wasn't missing the first page. I was missing. When I happened to turn around, a man was looking down at me, concerned.
その大丈夫ですか？
A man with an eye patch.
ええ、大丈夫です。私は無事です。
He looked like the other two. I'm confused. To me, they're all the same guy, but not me.
無事？これ足元に落ちていました。
ありがとうございます。
He was still standing there.
何か？
ごめんなさい。
He jumped back and put some distance between us. He looked at me and scattered his eye patch as if he were embarrassed. Once I got a better look, I recognized him. He was a customer who always came in the evening. That meant that half of the day had already passed. I had a directionless side. The man seemed to misunderstand and jumped a bit.
君は作家さんなんですね。
何か文句でも？
いえ、そんな。落ちている原稿を少し読んでしまったんです。悪気はないんです。ただ目について。すみません。面白かったです。
それでこの私に何をですか？
これをお会計してもらいたくて。
In his hand was Kyasako's Dr. Magra. Damn Nakami, he had ended up shoving it into the bookshelf after all.
それに関してお題はいりません。
でも結構真新しい本ですし。
いいんです。欲しいなら黙ってもらってください。
ありがとうございます。それじゃあご好意に甘えて。
What an overly dramatic guy. He continued to stand there, nervously wringing his hands and biting his lip. I leapt past him and returned to the register. Looked at me as if he still has something to say.
何なんですかさっきから。
すみません。
Why are we being so rude to him?
6時には店を閉めますよ。
物々交換というのはどうですか？
So that's what he decided to say? Slowly opening his bag and pulled out some sort of goldfish watering can made of tin. Then expect him to place it by the register with a clunk.
は？
僕、ブリキの収集が趣味で、
Not to the point where you carry them around, alright? Like...
ごめんなさい。気持ち悪いですよね。いきなりこんなこと。ごめんなさい。
ごめんなさい。
ごめんなさい。気持ち悪くてごめんなさい。
It was creepy. What I was thinking must have gotten through to him. Once you calm down, his face turned red and he ran out of umabashidos. The only ones left were me and the goldfish watering can. What was that about? I let out a sigh and as I looked into the goldfish, pretty eyes. The sight though was unreadable.
鬼人だな。
Yeah, the odds got an event. Where does a win in? Anyway, I managed to finish a short story about a heroic battle unfolding between a used bookstore owner and a yokai. I gathered the book and manuscript and looked it over fondly, but for some reason, my face began to fall as I turned each page. Suddenly it seemed boring. I figured Minakami's would definitely enjoy it, since his tastes were close to my own, but I mostly wondered how Kawase would feel about it. I should probably avoid showing it to Kawase. I turned the manuscript over and put the ink bottle on top as a way. It was something like a gut feeling. For some reason, my suddenly cold fervor made my heart feel as though it were crumbling in pieces. I wonder why. This was the first time I'd ever felt this way. At the moment the cuckoo clocks sleepily struck 6, it was closing time. The rain was coming down even harder. It was so cold I wondered if I would turn into snow. Chasing out the sound of the rain, I closed the doors, then I looked around the shop once more. In the end, the only customers they had been the man with the eye patch. But he hadn't really bought anything, so I had no money to turn over the shopkeeper. Actually, I'll never earn more money than what the shopkeeper gave me for food. That was another reason that Umebachido's was a mysterious shop.
玉森君、私は先に寝るよ。
帰ってきていたんですか？
ええ、2時間ほど前にね。声をかけたじゃないか。
そういえば。
I'm back. Getaway is dangerous here.
何かと戦っていたのかな。それじゃおやすみなさい。
The lights clicked off.
私は風呂屋に行ってきます。
うん。風邪をひかないようにね。
As far as I could remember, the shopkeeper had never pressed me about money, not even once. In short, this place was heaven to an unscrupulous person such as myself. Even though it was only 6 o'clock, the sky was totally dark thanks to the rainy weather. Everyone was deep under their umbrellas while I was freezing under my black mantle. I should have at least worn long sleeves, but I would end up foolishly picking out a short sleeve shirt, so I was freezing. People who were weak to the cold were gathered to Surugakucho's Chikai bathhouse. Oh, my head's hurting. The old man passing me by smelled unseasonably of yuzu. Once I got into the dressing room, into the baths, the place was filled with nothing but old and middle-aged men. It looked like an old woman's head bobbed among them. I took my place in the middle as I watched the old woman's head sway. Speaking of old woman, I recall Minakami's words. It's a little late, but here's some background on myself. My father and mother died when I was young. Right before I was born, my father was attacked by a bear and died. Then, when I was young, my mother disappeared from our village. After that, I lived with my grandfather and grandmother, just the 3 of us. But last year, I found out my grandfather had passed away. My grandmother was my only blood relative left on this earth. I felt like my grandmother and I were connected by some sort of spiritual power. If there was anything I wanted to eat or anything I desired, she knew exactly what it was and gave it to me right away. We were connected. No, maybe not quite. The connection was only a one-way thing. I knew nothing about her. Even now, it feels like my grandmother was watching me from somewhere. The old woman turned around. It was an old man. Of course, an old woman wouldn't be hanging out in the men's bath. When I turned around, my consciousness drifted towards the bathhouse Fuji that reached all the way to the ceiling. I heard the bathhouse Fuji, which was found in any old bathhouse nowadays. Sorry. Originated from Kihai bathhouse. Fuji's shading waters and the steam from the bath mixed it together, making me feel like I was partaking in a purification ritual. It was a picturesque view no man could ever grow tired of seeing. When I happened to look over at the group bathers to my side, they were turned away from that view of Mount Fuji, exchanging hushed whispers. I cocked my right ear to listen in for no reason in particular. Did you see? Did you hear? What? About the giant of Jimboshu? Giant? He's over 6 feet tall. Another one butted in. He doesn't use an umbrella, and he wears a funny mask. As soon as I spotted him, he vanished. He is weird looking. Is he a monster? Or a ghost? Or a ghost? I see. How interesting. Maybe it was a silent street performer for a new kabuki show? Maybe some sort of promotion for a new motion picture? That earthquake earlier must have been found from the giant's footsteps. Idiot. No, it had to be. He had a pretty active imagination.
少年よ、
は？何？
その話詳しくお聞かせ願いたい。
They fell silent. After looking at each other a few times, they snorted. And then they showed me their cheeky, jiggling faces.
バカ。
なっ、
子供の話にマジになってんじゃねえよ。
どういうことだ。
They instantly cracked up hard enough to shake the bath. When I glanced around, everyone was staring at me with dead looks in their eyes. What? It was like I was the one being made a fool.
おい待て。
うるせえ浪人生。
なぜそれを。
They distanced themselves from me in a train-like procession. Seriously, the bravs around here didn't know how to behave. If they were innocent children, they would have wanted an adult to listen to them, and would gladly have told their story. Who dared to make fun of an adult and insult the ambitious title of reigning say? Annoying groans escaped from between my clenched teeth. When I came to my senses, I looked around. Even more old stares were focusing on me. Not good. I sank down to my nose in the tub and hit myself as I made my way from corner to corner. Without calling off from my bath, I headed straight back to my Bushidos and promptly faced my manuscript. I ignored the Frogman manuscript and was going to dive right back into continuing the phantom in the basement, but as expected, I couldn't get the rumor I'd heard from those rats in... What the hell am I reading? I lost myself in the middle of what I was reading. As expected, I couldn't get the rumor I'd heard from those rats in Kikai's bathhouse out of my head. Alright. I figured it was promotion for a show, but somehow it was spot on. The phantom in the basement would curl up his large body in the cellar where he lived. Then, night after night, he would come up to the world on the surface and abduct someone on the verge of death. He had no interest in those trying to live. He would suddenly disappear when he'd been seen because he could sense that person's life force. That's what were the phantom in the basement motives. Well, it's a longer story. I will explain later.
思念というものがある。
春彦さん。
Moment since the presence, my hallucinations, Harushiko-san was sitting right beside me. On his shoulder was a frogman who had shrunk down because his spiritual powers had been subdued.
何かね。
いえ、ただどうして？
筆が止まっているのはなぜかと思って出てきた所存だ。
My hallucinations were taken to me now. I really must have been tired. I thought about keeping quiet and let it pass, but he began to slowly read my manuscript.
勝手に読まないでください。
この怪人、確かにさっきの少年たちが話していた怪人とそっくりだな。
聞いてたんですか？
思念に姿形はない。思念とは感情と認識だけで形成されている無形の存在だ。
だから何の話ですか？
ここは何の町だ、玉森君。
神保町、本の町です。
本とは空想、空想とは無形、空想は思念に通ず。君が地下室の怪人を描いたのは偶然ではない。
どういうことです？
怪人という無形の思念が一人歩きしているのだ。
Walking around on its own? If that was the case, did I get that idea from somewhere?
つまりは玉森君、そう深く考える必要はないということだ。
With those last words, Haruhiko's hand suddenly disappeared. What was he thinking? I had no idea. My hallucinations were something born from my subconscious, but up until now, I don't think I'd ever had hallucinations leave me with words I couldn't understand. Thinking about it was pointless. After all, I probably understood it subconsciously. For the first time in my life, the idea of having a pen in my hand seemed awful, so I lay my futon. I stretched out my hand to turn off the light, but I couldn't reach it. All I ended up doing was illuminating my hand. I actually gave up and shut out the light with my own eyelids. It had been raining since morning. I gave my goldfish his food, but he was facing away from it, as usual. Minakami once told me a fish's sense of smell was better than its vision. So eventually he'll wake up to the smell of his food. Afterwards, opened the shop and revised my manuscript next to the register, like I usually did. For a while, I heard the shopkeeper breathing as he slept, but once noon rolled around, I finally heard the sound of a futon being folded.
店主、おはようございます。
おはよう玉森君。朝からご苦労様です。
I suppose if I, Huaning say, made scraping noises and muttered to himself all morning, anyone would think he was studying. Honestly, if the shopkeeper figured out all my hard work was actually bullshit, I'm sure a lecture would be inevitable. I threw my pen, feeling a little guilty.
今日も体調が良いので少し散歩してきます。留守をお願いしますよ。
いつもすみません。
え？
客入りが悪いのは私のせいです。
売り上げの心配をしているのかい？
すみません。
I tried to act as depressed as I could. The shoji opened slightly and out of the single yen.
これで美味しいものでも食べて元気出しなさい。
店主。
風邪だけはひかないようにね。
はい。
Can we date the shopkeeper? The shopkeeper nodded in relief. I heard the back door open and he left. It's not like I wanted money, I was just pretending to be a poor man for the sake of the shopkeeper who wanted to perform acts of kindness. With this money saved up, entrusted to me, I could buy copy, my scripture papers, ink, and even go to the bathhouse. It was a happy cycle that didn't hurt anyone.
そこで何してる？
お？
川瀬、来てたのか。驚かすな。
障子に話しかけるなんて、君もとうとう末期だね。
店主だ。店主に話しかけていたのだ。
姿を見せない不思議な店主。ね。本当にいるなら会わせてほしいよ。
どういう意味だそれは。
Seeming to lose interest, Kawase grabbed the goldfish watering can.
何これ？いい年してブリキのおもちゃって。また変な趣味を見つけたね。
お代の代わりにもらったのだ。欲しいならやるぞ。
いらないよ。必要ないものはゴミと同じだ。
Yeah, honestly, even I thought it was trash.
だがその金魚じょうろと同じくらい不要な本だったのだ。
不要な本？児童書なんてあったっけ？
ドグラマグラ、夢の旧作の最新刊だ。
悪趣味な子供だね。
いや、買っていったのは24、5の男だった。
大人？玉森くん、それ騙されちゃってる。
だから別に構わん。ドグラマグラだって水上が勝手に置いていったものだし。
じゃあゴミだけ残ったわけか。
Though, when I got a better look at it, the goldfish watering can did have good eyes. The pattern looked hand-painted and it seemed like it would have some warmth to it and start swimming at any moment if you were to touch it. I was starting to feel bad about cutting trash over and over again. The guy with the eye patch had really seemed to treasure it. He had raised this little guy with all his love. When I snatched it back from Kawase, I stuffed it into my pocket with the intention of warming it up.
うわ、もう大事にしてる。
Kawase, go away.
勝手だろ。
I can do what I want.
そうね
Yeah.
人にはいろんな思考があるからね。
Wasn't that sentiment a little too late at this point? Without asking, he snatched the manuscript next to the register and began to slowly walk around the shop. When he finished reading the pages, he discarded it like a girl playing He loves me not with flower petals.
おい。
ああ、失礼。今日も京都で羽のように軽い原稿だ。
原稿を汚すな。後で水上にも読ませるのだぞ。
あいつは文字が書いてあれば何でも喜ぶさ。それこそ結核患者の日記だって喜んで読むだろうね。
くそ。
Kawase scattered one page after another as I crawled after him, picking them up. When I happened to look up, he was staring down at me coldly.
これってもしかしてみかん？
Oh no.
書ききれなかったのだ。昨日のうちに。
また不完全なものを見せようとしたの？
勝手に見たのはお前だろう。だから私は今からそれについて説明をしようと。
君の取り柄はバカみたいな執筆の速さだ。どうも信じられないな。
He let go of the last page, then went past me and headed upstairs.
おい待てってな。
I cropped one of the manuscript page under my hand. It must have looked so pitiful. I gathered up the manuscript pages, brushing dirt and rain from them as I went, but the frogman was stepping on one of them.
おいどけ。
Frogman was looking in shock as the staircase Kawase had vanished up. What a stubborn and stupid hallucination. I blew a puff of air and he turned to dust and disappeared.
おい川瀬。
When I finally catch up with him upstairs, I was surprised to see he was standing there quietly. My newest manuscript, the story about the used book store owner and the frogman, was in his hands. Amazing, Kawase hadn't discarded it. He was speed reading it truly in his usual way. The silence was so deep that it felt like I could even hear his eyes move. Every once in a while, his mouth would open in astonishment as his breathing would become shallow. I held my own breath as I watched him. No way. There was no way. Had I finally been able to tug at his heartstrings? My throat tightening with a slightly premature hope and sense of accomplishment. I desperately swallowed it down and waited for him to speak. Finally, he let out a sigh.
これって俺のことか？
え？
Huh?
俺とあいつのことだろ。
え？
Kawase didn't move a muscle, and his smile widened. Him? Who? This guy? Who? Well, he hadn't actually said this guy. At any rate, I couldn't figure out why he was smiling.
一体何を読んだんだ？
何って、ここにあった原稿だよ。カエル男と古書店店主のお話だ。
だよな。
So what did he mean by me and him? I could see his dark nature through his usual smile. Suddenly, the ground shook. It was an earthquake. Even I could tell this time. But Kawase gaze didn't move an inch as he continued to look at me and smile.
このカエルは自分が死んでいることを知らないかわいそうなカエルだ。でも無理ないよね。まさか死ぬとは思わない。橋から突き落とされたとしても下は川だから。カエルは水生生物だ。元ある世界に投げ出されて死ぬわけだ。
私は死んだと思った。
Suddenly my memories fell from my mouth. A long time ago in the country, I saw Kawase drop a frog from a bridge. The frog, knocked around by the harsh wind and rain, had fallen quietly, soundlessly into the river and floated away. I thought he had died. I thought he had killed it. Come to think of it, I had a feeling Kawase had looked at me and smiled that day too.
にゃははは。そういえばそんなこともあったな。
その気持ち悪い笑い方 やめろっつっただろ。
にゃはは。
This story somehow ended up with the frog man becoming the shopkeeper's assistant. Even though it was a story that overflowed with happiness, Kawase carefully and toughly ripped it apart and threw it away without reading to the end. Could have said hey or stop or wait. There were plenty of things I could have said to stop him, but I just watched it. Actually, I felt this was punishment I deserved. I felt through it was better that only the manuscript was bearing the brunt of his rage. Even though we were friends, even though we could joke around with each other, there were things that Kawase scared me. In that moment, where I was even too afraid to breathe, I realized something.
お前土足じゃないか。
君こそ裸足じゃないか。足が汚れるよ。
意味がわからん。いいから布団から足をどけろ。
はいはい。
Kawase said as he sat down on the desk beside the window and looked outside. I could tell from his eyes that he was in a bad mood.
なんなんだお前。おかしいぞ。いつもはもっと。
Blatantly snide with me, right? Kawase kept his face turned away as he continued speaking, his words slim.
そもそもなんで俺が君の批評を引き受けたか
Oh, I
わ
jumped.
からないか。ただ君そういうところあるから気をつけた方がいい。
That side of me?
現実と空想がごっちゃになってる。困る人もいるんだよ。
Did I upset Kawase? What he had just said was pretty serious. So I was starting to feel kind of bad.
まあすまない。許してくれ川瀬。
Kawase's gloomy face was reflected in the dirty window. He called me and pointed to something outside.
みなかみが来たみたいだよ。
Minakami!
みなかみ。
どうしたんだ血相変えて。
別に何も。それよりほらこの前の続きの原稿だ。
おお。
Minakami's face relaxed as he immediately dove into the manuscript. At that point, Kawase came down and Minakami gave him a troubled look.
久しぶりだな川瀬。
いや久しぶり。
Kawase wasn't giving off that mood from earlier. Somehow, even he seemed to be back to normal. However, their conversation, which felt like it was between two strangers rather than friends, made me uncomfortable for a different reason.
3人揃うのは1ヶ月ぶりだね。
川瀬も忙しいんだな。
一番忙しいのはみなかみだろ。
俺いや、そんなことはないよ。昨日も今日も顔を出したし、週に3回はここに来てるんじゃないか。
私と川瀬は毎日会っているぞ。
うん。暇だな。お前らも。
悪かったな。
It wasn't like we planned it or anything, but it happened to go to the cafe. Kawase would already be there. The opposite had happened before too. Although that may have meant that we actually did have a lot of free time.
ところで君、聖望は？
え？はあ。
Why is he with his eye closed? I want to see his eye. Nakami suddenly touched his head as if he had just realized something was off.
どこかに置いてきたのかな。
またなくしたのか？というか、まだ見つかってないんじゃないのか？
なくした？毎日被る聖望を？
正直言うとまだ見つかってない。電車の中に忘れてそれっきりだ。
君も結構抜けてるね。バカになる風邪を玉森くんから移されたんじゃない？
うん、そうかもしれない。
あ、
うんじゃないだろう。否定しろ、否定を。
I've mentioned it before, but Minakami was an avid reader. He probably focused on his reading more than anything else. The most amazing thing about him was how once something captured his attention, he became blind to everything else around him. You could grab him by the shoulders and shake him, but unless his book got closed, at some point he wouldn't stop reading. There were also times he could continue holding conversation as he read.
この前はおあいやと真正面からぶつかってたな。
うん、あれは本当に申し訳なかった。
なるほどね。だからそんなにくたびれてるのが君の制服。
Compared to Kawase, Minakami's uniform was slightly faded. There was a difference between high-grade nori and cheap, yellow-tinted nori. But well, in the end, they tasted the same. Kawase put on his cap and nori-like mantle.
さて、玉森くんのくだらない小説も破り捨てたし、俺はコーヒーでも飲みに行こうかな。
一仕事終えたみたいに言うな。
コーヒーって例の神田橋にあるカフェか？
そう。俺も玉森くんもずっとあそこのコーヒーにハマっててね。ついでに玉森くんの猫舌を直す練習をしてるんだ。
また意地悪なことを。
Are they like twins or brothers or something like that?
それじゃあね、水上にとことん甘やかされるといいよ。
Kawase opened his umbrella and left in a hurry. Why had he even come? Just to read up my manuscript?
川瀬の批評はどうなったんだ？
別に何も、なんてことはない。
そうか、ひどく言われたんだな。
Minakami seemed to have figured out. He probably guessed it earlier. I glanced at him hopefully, but he didn't seem to be looking over my manuscript.
なあ玉森、やっぱりこの原稿持ち帰ってもいいか？
え、ああ、構わないか？
講義の合間に出てきたんだ。すぐに戻らないと。
夜の活動には行けるのか？
もちろん。
ならいいのだ。
それまで俺の代わりになりそうなものを持ってきたんだ。
He handed me 5 reference books.
おい。
そう不機嫌な顔をするな。これは英文小説だから意味がわかれば楽しめると思うぞ。
I can understand them. Most.
そうでもなさそうだな。
うるさい。急いでるならさっさと行け。
ごめん、そうするよ。
Minakami smiled again and left. He was normally calm and easygoing, but today he seemed pretty busy. Of course, that was dangerous since he was prone to ignoring his surroundings. Come to think of it, something like that had happened a long time ago. He had been walking aimlessly on his way back home from school while reading all of my manuscripts, so I was escorting him. Kawase had looked at us coldly and asked, "What are you guys doing?" But if I hadn't been there, Minakami could have been attacked by a wild boar or falling into a rice paddy. Anyway, whatever Minakami was focusing on something with all his heart, bad things happened. I immediately went after him.
水上！
どうした？
Minakami raised his voice a little, even though he was worried about people staring.
停滞に戻るんだろ。
ああ、
水道橋まで送る。
いいよ。店を開けっぱなしで出たらさすがに怒られるぞ。
店主は出かけている。どうせ客も来ない。
でも万が一。
I closed the shop doors. Minakami turned towards me, amazed, then he slowly approached me.
客が来ないなら来ないなりに勉強でも。
新しい物語の構想が昨日浮かんだのだ。
There was a long silence. I knew the words Minakami was weak to. I ended up accompanying Minakami and walking down Hakusan Street.
で、そのカエル男は言うのだ。恨み腹さでおくべきか。
自我を取り戻すのだな。
そう、カエル男は人間であったことを思い出し、自分を殺した男に復讐するのだ。そしてその後、カエル男は天使の助手となり、
それで？
この物語は終わる。
そうか。なかなか怪奇な話だった。砕けた金平糖で口を切り、甘みの中にじわりと鉄の苦さを感じるような。
うむ。
It was an everyday thing, but I couldn't ever really understand Minakami's critiques. Perhaps because he was the son of a brewer, he had a sensitive tongue, and he often compared my stories to flavors and cooking. There were always impressions I didn't quite understand, but I could at least tell that he liked me.
お前は黙って聞いてくれるのだな。
黙って聞かずにはいられないよ。お前の話はいつも面白い。
だが、カーセはその原稿を破り捨てたぞ。
え？
Minakami turned around when I stopped. We had reached Suido's bridge before I knew it.
ありえない。あいつなんてことを。
いいのだ、どうせ猫も好かん。
犬も好かんだろ。
どっちだっていいだろう。雑食は雑食だ。
それもそうだな。だが畜生も好かないものを空いてる俺は一体何なんだろうな。
よっぽどの変人だ。
Minakami was a nice guy. I always thought Kawase and I were total opposite, but when Minakami and I were completely different people. But even Minakami and I were completely different people. If Kawase and I were the king in out in the astral domain, then Minakami was looking down on us from the devil domain. Minakami laughed as he left. With no intention of saying anything else, I also turned around. But why? Why did my heart race with every step I took away from him? I immediately turned back around, so the bridge was there as usual, but Minakami had already disappeared in the crowd. From there, I rode the streetcar. Even if I went back to the shop, the only customer would be that guy with the eye patch. I didn't even notice the rain. I figured the lie wouldn't work, but there were plenty of excuses I could make to the shopkeeper would forgive me. I went away past Jimboshu's and Imabachido and got into Kendo Bridge. I saw Kawase's head through the window. I came in and sat across from him without waiting for a server. Kawase's face twitched as he closed his book.
なんで来たの？店番は？
Yeah, what were we doing here with him?
お昼休みだ。それより何を読んでいたんだ？
知り合いの知り合いから借りた小説だよ。
Kawase tossed it at me, annoyed. He wasn't treating it like something he'd borrowed.
あ、ウォーマンイン
あ、ウーマン・イン・グエイ。幽霊堂の原作。といえば君にもわかりやすいかな。
それなら私も読んだぞ。
I looked through it again, but I couldn't understand the English writing at all.
ほんとバカだね君。ページをめくるのは左からでしょ。
え？あ、わかってる。ただぼーっとしていただけだ。
君に勉強を教えるのは浅い皿に水を注ぐようなものだね。
Can we go back to the other one? I forgot the name already. I'm sorry, I'm not good with names. I forgot names.
意味がわからん。
今まさに水がこぼれたよ。
わからん。というか、私はこんなくだらないことを問答しに来たのではない。
I put the book on the table and pushed it towards Kawase.
田舎見のことだ。
Nakami.
最近のあいつおかしいと思わないか？
おかしい。
今日もそうだ。さっき来て、さっき帰った。
大方講義でもあるんでしょ。構ってくれないからってすねるのよ。
拗ねてなどいない。講義があるとは確かに言っていたが、いつものあいつなら講義をすっぽかしてまで私の原稿を読むはずなのに。
あいつ一体何考えてる。
だから教えの違和感を感じるのだ。
君の方がおかしいっていう考えはないの？
なんだと？
って君をバカにしたいところだけど、あいつがおかしいのはずっと前からだよ。久しぶりなんて嘘だ。俺は帝大で何度も水上を見かけてるよ。あいつだって俺を見かけてるだろうね。
なのに久しぶり。
あいつ俺を避けてるんだ。
Oh. Kawase lit a fresh match. Cigarette smoke gently drifted about. I brushed it away with my hands as I questioned Kawase.
避ける？お前を？
この前閲覧室で奴を見つけたんだ。けど俺が本を選んで戻ってくるまでの間に奴はいなくなっていた。
どういうことだ？
俺に話しかけられると思って逃げたんでしょ。
Fireworks. The more I heard, the less I understood. It wasn't in Minakami's personality to attack anyone. Fireworks again. No matter how much of a brute Kawase was, I didn't think Minakami would do something so blatant.
さっき問い詰めてやれば。
そんな野暮なことするわけないでしょ。だからここまで引いてやったのに。
Kawase let out a smoke-filled sigh. I could believe he would actually had a conversation with Minakami with that on his mind.
だがな。お前はいつからそう思っていたんだ？
帝大に受かってからかな。
1年も前からか？
It was a familiar face from the same village they had even spent time together naked. in his view of Willie Kawase. I pulled the ticket out of my pocket and scooted it towards Kawase.
狂える悪魔。再上映するのか。よかったね。
夜、東洋キネマで水上と待ち合わせしている。お前も来い。
俺は遠慮するよ。怪奇映画なんて興味ない。
幽霊島を読んでいるくせに何を言う。
だから知り合いの知り合いに押し付けられただけだ。ちょうど今読み終わったところだけど、あんまり好みじゃないね。
貴様、ルイコの良さもわからんのか。
俺が読んだのは原作、アリス・マリエル・ウィリアムソンの方だ。ルイコの本は読む気もしない。
ちょっと待て。幽霊島の原作はファントムタワー。チョはベンリスンのはずだ。
ルイコは嘘をついたんだろ
う。嘘？
幽霊島は連載ものだから、完結した原作によってネタバレされないように配慮したんだろ
う。そうだとしてもだ。なぜ完結した今も原作者を公にしないのだろう。
さあ、この功績を自分のものだけにしたいんじゃないか。
ゲスな勘繰りだな。
君だったらそうしそうだと思って。
失礼な。いやしかしお前の知り合いの知り合いってやつはなかなか知見のある男なのだな。巷で幽霊島の原作はどこにあるかと騒がれている中で正解を見つけるとは。
けど本当のところはどうなんだろうね。俺はルイコの方を読んでいないから照合できない。
なら私と照合すればいい。
じゃあどこから答え合わせをしようか。
舞台はイギリス。
イギリス。
主人公はマルベ・ドークロー。
テレンス・ダークム
そう、もうこの時点で違う。
はあ？日本人向けに主人公の名前変えるなんてよくあることでしょ。
そうか。じゃあ怪美人として登場した女の名前は？
ホープって名前を比べても無意味だって言ってるだろう。
怪しい医者の名前は？
ポール・レベル。だから
そこは一緒なんだな。
そんなことより物語の顛末を照合した方が手っ取り早い。
怪美人の正体は松谷秀子でも和田お夏でもなく丸部春子で、
ダークムアのいとこだった。
You're talking about the book.
ああ、そうか。ルイコがこれを公にしなかったのは利権や功績も関係なしにこの物語を自分だけのものにしたかったからなのかもしれない。私はますます素直でけなげなルイコが好きだ。
何が素直でどこがけなげなの？だいたい世に出してる時点でもう自分のものではないでしょ。
Carter took a long drag of his cigarette. Once it had burned all the way to his mouth, he puffed out a huge gust of smoke.
で、ルイコがどうとか今はどうでもいいのだ。今日の夜3人で活動写真に行こう。 さすればあいつのぎこちなさも
I think all the dialogue was kind of useless. But anyway.
何を笑う
It was an awful, chilling smile at any rate. I could tell he wasn't interested. I took it away, but he smiled even wider.
だから何なのだ
水上は君のことが好きなんだよ。
は
あ
だから俺と君が一緒にいるのは思わしくないんじゃないかな。
意味がわからん。
物好きだね。
Kawase was giving me the creeps.
自分が避けられる理由を真面目に考えろ、カーセイ。
真面目に考えてこの結果だよ。水上は俺に嫉妬してる。残念な男だって。
それは結果ではなく悪口だ。だが
It'd be funny if I turned the joke around on him.
お前だって人のことを言えるのか
Instead, mentioning past Kawase with my chin. From of the counter were 3 waitresses and huddled together and squealing. Of course, the waitress with the handkerchief was in the middle. To be honest, they were all cute, adorable even. Anyone would be crazy to be adored by those young ladies and not make a movie on them.
あんな小娘、興味ないね。
下心は少しもないのか
しょんべん臭い手は嫌いだ。
Ew. How can I put it? Cause it was over the top. The remarks he spat out were always sarcastic. I wasn't the only one who felt that way either. At the cafe, he would wipe his spoon with a napkin over and over again, but the worst was when he would ask who had prepared his food. Honestly, it made me want to scare the hell out of Kawase at least once.
私は便所の後手を洗わない。鼻もほじるし、頭がかゆければボリボリと素手でかく。お前はそんな原稿に触れてきたのだ。
I eagerly went to touch Kawase's hand. When I did, he suddenly grabbed me and brought his lips close to the back of my hand.
君は特別だ。とでも言うと思った。
Right, when I thought he was going to touch his lip to my hand, he made a sound in his throat and spat on it.
貴様
Ew.
君の原稿を読んだ後もちゃんと手は洗ってるよ。ふやけるまでね。
潔癖症もそこまで来ると人間不信だな。
君みたいな不潔な人間がいるから嫌でもこうなるんだ。
信じられるのは自分だけ。あ？
それは語弊がある。
その通りだろ。どうせお前が触れられるのは花沢くらいか。
花沢って。
あ？
どうしたのいきなり。アホみたいな声出して。
Something has suddenly occurred to me. Who is Anazawa? There was one more friend we all had in common, Hanazawa. What? He was 3 years older than us, so he would silently guide our unruly and rambunctiously group. If Hanazawa said something, even the animal Kawase would eventually listen. Even now, Kawase would lower his eyes if he heard Hanazawa's name. Hanazawa, who was the first of us to graduate from middle school after Aizo as a boy to enroll in a military academy. I hadn't seen or heard from him in 8 years.
もしかしたら水上のやつ 昨日花沢に会ってたのかもしれない。旧友に会いに行くと言っていた。
いや、それはない。
きっとそうだ。私たち以外の旧友なんて花沢しかないだろ
嘘でもついたのか。
う。嘘？
For some reason, Kawase's mouth suddenly widened.
例えば女に会うとか、その女は本当にただの知人で君に嫉妬させたくないから。
だからさっきから嫉妬とか女とか何なのだ。私は水上にそういう意味で好かれているとは思っていない。
And I also didn't think Minakami had met some woman. Kawase's smile got even wider.
鈍感にも程があるだろ君。それともただ単に認めたくないだけか。
何？
だってよく考えてみなよ。いくら病的な愛所家だってつまらない話を手放して喜べるわけないだろ。美食家が美食しか食わないよ。
何が言いたいのだ。私はバカだからさっぱりわからん。
だからさっきも言ったけど、水上は君が好きなんだよ。君がクソみたいな小説を書こうと適当に喜べば君の機嫌を取れると思っている。
意味がわからん。
愚鈍だね。奴が君を褒めるのはおべっかだと言いたいんだ。
おべっか？
水上は君を喜ばせるために君の原稿を楽しむふりをしていたということさ。
だが待て、なら水上は私のどこに惹かれたと言うんだ。私の魅力は奇想天外な空想力でできていると思っている。しかしその魅力を否定するなら、水上は一体私のどこに惹かれたというのだ？
それはそうだね。君にいいところなんて。
No. Kawase's serious face looked unusual, perplexed. And realized he was making that expression because he was trying too hard to figure out what Minakami found so great about me. I felt like Kawase was looking at the face of a worthless idiot. See, I never thought the first argument I would ever win against Kawase would be over something like this. No matter how long I waited for his comeback, it didn't seem to be on its way. I honestly wish he would object, but I wouldn't have been able to stand that either.
ともかくいい加減にしろ。カズ、お前だって認めたくないだけだろ。
ちょっと黙っててよ。今必死に探してるんだから。玉森君のいいところさ。
水上がこっそり花沢と会っていることに嫉妬して、お前は事実無根を述べている。
なんだって。
お前は水上に嫉妬している。
Oh.
違う。撤回しろ。
めめしいな、お前も。
いい加減黙れよ、君。
Boy, did we both have mud on our faces? When we realized neither of us had a leg left to stand on, we both fell silent. Then we looked up at the window and signed.
暇だな。こうも苛立つのは低気圧のせいだ。
いつまで続くんだろうね。
Afterwards, Gus left the cafe to go to his lectures at the Bureau University, and I was left to pass the time on my own. Whenever I left alone like this, I would usually recall Kawase's annoying face and broad. But for once, the one on my mind was Minakami. Just who was the old friend made up yesterday? Would have been such a woman? Could even look Madame Osmond directly in the eye. To anyway, therefore the most probable person was Hanazawa. It could only be him.
遅いぞ。
すみません。忘れてました。
Compared to how she was crossing her to was totally different. I stuffed my mouth with the omelette rice. I started out the
あ
window.
の、
なんだ、まだいたのか。
あなたと帝大生さんって一体どんな関係なんですか？
Immediately knew what her intentions were.
友人だ。
じゃあ、どこにお住みか知ってます？
知ってどうする？
カルスピお付けします。
She set the coffee in her hand down with a clunk.
本郷三丁目に大きめの洋館があるだろう。わからなければ近所のやつに池田邸はどこですかと問えばすぐに教えてくれる。
そこにお住まいで？
家族の邸宅だ。知らぬ者はおらんだろうな。
そうなんですか。家族の家なんて憧れる。女中さんとか執事とかさぞかしたくさん雇ってるんだろうな。
She is going to kill everyone. I'm getting some yandere vibes from her.
いや、一人だ。
家族の大きい邸宅にたったお一人？
ああ、わけあって今は一人で。
Wait, what was it going on about? Emptied my glass in one gulp and gave it back to the waitress. Then shooed her away with the back of my hand.
割に合わなくないですか？
無理に言って奴に見つかるようなことはするなよ。私から言えるのはそれだけだ。
わかりました。ありがとうございます。
The waitress said, leaving in a huff. She was definitely going to go to Kawas's house. I don't know what she would do when she got there, but it would be pretty funny if she ended up bothering him somehow. She's a stalker. She's going to stalk him. She's a freak.
ずいぶん長い昼休憩だな、玉森くん。
春彦さん、
君はあの女給を気にして。
別に特別な気持ちはありません。確かに可愛い子だとは思っていましたが、ちょっと違和感を感じるというか。
違和感？
あれ、カツラですよね。
That's a wig, isn't it?
カエル男、見てきなさい。
The frogman went up closer to the waitress, and when he was right behind her, his eyes got even wider. Haruhiko-san and I both wear our glasses, looked through the lenses, and confirmed what the frogman saw.
昨日カーセに掴まれたのを見ておかしいと思ったんです。
玉森くん、確かに彼女は2つの髪質を持っているようだ。何
She's a
か事
guy.
情がありそうだな。
The frogman returned at the moment, and Haruhiko-san and I both fixed our
不
glasses.
思議だ。
髪は女の命という。美しく保つふりをするのも大変だな。
やはりそういうことですか。
Plain scheme for now is that nothing been happening. No, like I didn't have much choices, so I don't know if the game is supposed to have choices or not. But I've been playing for 2 hours, and it's like 40 or 60 hours I've seen what the gameplay is, and I have 0 choices at all.
幸せそうですね、玉森さん。
ああ、3時間待った甲斐がある。
君というやつは本当に。
So now we went back. back to the bookstore.
お風呂屋で見た子たちですね。
あ、昨日の浪人生じゃねえか。
Oh, I student failed their university entrance exam and is currently studying to take it again. Oh, I didn't know we could do that. Fuck. Look at him.
ヒューヒュー。なんだその冷やかしは。意味がわからん。もっと奥詰めろよ。俺たちが乗れねえだろ。
On my head.
そうだそうだ。
That's what I was trying to do.
な、貴様ら。ここは公共の場だ。見よ、この冷ややかな視線に気づかぬか。
I said that, but when I glanced around, everyone was looking out the window and pretending not to notice us. They weren't completely indifferent, though. In the glass of the window, my eyes met those of an unfamiliar man. You feel the same, say something.
いいから静かにしていろよ。
I got further back and was instantly just around by the crowd and dropped my umbrella. I tried to pick it up, but it was so squished I couldn't move. That's when a pale hand picked it up.
これどうぞ。
もうすまない。おい、何拾ってんだよ。
ついごめん。
お前はほんと優しいな。
なんだかお兄さんがかわいそうで。
かわいそうなわけあるか。こいつは痛いけな少年に突然話しかける不審者なんだぞ。
What? That was how they saw me?
そうだ。昨日も言ったが、こいつも監視対象だってことを忘れるな。
でも昨日話しかけてきたのは僕たち不正規連隊の仲間になりたかっただけかも。
The regular regiment. In Shoho Ochikawa's reputation of Sherlock Holmes, the Barker Street regulars were known as Barker Town's regular regiment. Oh, thank you. Didn't know that. Numbing a simple group of delinquents, regular regiment was pretty over the top. I was an adult. I had no intention of hanging out with those who were less mature. Only able to move one hand, I pat the somewhat well-behaved one's head, then hid myself deeper into the crowd. I was unbelievably thankful. The next stop was Shibonsho. I didn't want to be in that crampy car any longer than necessary. In the street passed by, the 12 pressed against the window and made weird faces, but I no longer paid them any mind. As long as I didn't try at the streetcar around this time of day, I would run into them. As long as I didn't go to the bathhouse around the same time before, I'll be able to avoid them. Okay, I'm gonna ask for wait a moment because I'll be right back. Actually, I think I'm gonna end the video of playing this game here out of the stream, and yeah. So if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe. I wanna post it more, and that's all. Bye bye.